Welcome everybody to this year's annual Southern Supper. We're really happy and honored that everybody is here tonight. We think we have a very good program. This is for a wonderful cause. All of us who are involved in the Punta Gorda History Center are passionate about preserving and maintaining the history of Punta Gorda. And my name is Edwin M. I'm on the board of the Punta Gorda History Center, and I'm going to try to give some order to the events tonight, which might be a little bit of a challenge. The first thing I'd like to do is welcome the president of the Punta Gorda History Center, Mr. Gene Murtha.
Good evening, everyone, and once again, thank you all for coming. It's great having an MC with massive amount of experience like Edwin M. Ed's been our MC for the last few years, and he's committed to the next 10. So, there are some people I'd like to thank, okay? And certainly there are sponsors who have done nothing but support some of them over the years, okay? So, special thanks to McCann Law Firm. And smugglers. Every year, these people step up. And if you ever have a need for understanding anything about Punta Gorda, some of our documents are certainly going to shed some light on. So, there's certainly some people here that I'd like to acknowledge that are elected officials. Starting off, we have Honorable Judge Paul Sandroni. We have County Supervisor-elect Paul Polk. I'm sorry, no Supervisor-elect Leah. Where's Leah? Leah here? There she is. And a Charlotte County Property Appraiser, Paul Polk, who was going to be here, he bought a ticket, and he got called out of town. But no. So, and Punta Gorda Mayor, Lynn Matthews, way back there, who's just back from Tallahassee there, 3 days, you said, and she's bringing a ton of money back. So, and City Council member, Donna Peterman, right up here. Punta Gorda City member, Bill Dryberg. So, I want to thank you all for coming, folks, and I'm going to turn this back over to Ed Wojcicki. Thank you, Ed.
The honoree is the Church of God of Prophecy of Punta Gorda. I'm going to read what's on the plaque. It was early spring 1950 when Brother J. Hines, pastor of the Church of God of Prophecy, Bokeelia, asked Reverend Enoch Daniels and his daughter, Vivian Daniels Davis, an evangelist, to hold a revival in Punta Gorda. On May 14, 1950, Vivian Daniels Davis and Lef Lowe erected a revival tent in downtown Punta Gorda. These services evolved to become the Church of God of Prophecy, Punta Gorda. The original church building was replaced in 1999 with a new sanctuary which stands on the corner of Cooper Street and Lincoln Road. And May 14th, the next year, 2025, will mark 75 years of service for Church of God of Prophecy, Punta Gorda. So with that, I'd like to, and accepting on behalf of the church, is Reverend Mac Willis, and I ask Mr. Willis to come forward, please.
We want to say on behalf of our local church and family, it's a great honor to receive this today, and we appreciate it very much. God bless you.
The next honoree is the business, and it's really most appropriate that we recognize this year the Farr Law Firm. This year, for all of those of you who do not know, marks the 100th anniversary of the Farr Law Firm. It's not only one of the largest law firms in Charlotte County, but the Farr Law Firm is also one of the more respected law firms in the state of Florida. Congratulations to the Farr Law Firm for 100 years of service to their community. This honor for the Farr Law Firm is David Holmes. David?
Thank you, Eddie. It's a great year for the Farr Law Firm this year to mark 100 years, and I don't think there's anyone that we would want more to introduce us tonight than Edwin Titsky, because there's another great man who's been recognized before, another great law firm in Charlotte County, and that's the Titsky firm. And we all came up together. So thank you, Eddie. I'll be respectful of everybody's time, but I want to introduce the folks that we have here today. Partners, Jack Hackett, Will Sunter, Brett Seifert, who are here, Guy Emmerich, who is here. We have some alumni who are here tonight, too, that I think we should recognize. Bob Seifert, who retired from the firm several years ago. Bob's over there. Ellen Webb, who was the administrator of the firm for many years. Michael P. Hamons, who was a partner in the firm for many years. Joe McCrory, who was an attorney in the firm. And our partner, Roger Miller, is here tonight as well. So those are just a few of the people that make this institution who it is, what it is today. And it's all grounded in the values that Earl D. Farr set for us when he moved here from Wauchula with $500 and a typewriter 100 years to go. And when you're 25 years old and you move anywhere to start a business with $500 and a typewriter, failure is not an option. And for us today, that's the way we approach what we do. Failure is not an option. We're dedicated to our clients and our business associates, many of whom are here today, and without all of you, we wouldn't have what we have today. So thank you to this community. Thank you to everyone who's here. We appreciate it very much.
Now we're getting to the individual honorees. The next honoree is Dr. Braxton T. Blount. Accepting on behalf of Dr. Braxton Blount is Sherry Dennis. Sherry, who is a past director of the Animal Welfare League here in Charlotte County.
As a history buff, I was excited to read about Dr. Braxton and his dog Pee-wee. And so somehow little Pee-wee developed a taste for beer. However, my rescue prefers Pinot Grigio. So he frequently trotted downtown to Billy's bar where the owner would draw him a saucer of beer. And eventually the doctor would go into the and settle his tab. I can only imagine. When Pee-wee unfortunately died of an old age, again, he placed the little dog in a child's plush lined casket and laid him out in state in his waiting room for 2 days. The interesting note about where they are actually buried is that there is no record or tombstone for Dr. Blount or Pee-wee at either local cemetery. Presumably, they lie somewhere near each other in unmarked graves. On behalf of the Blount family, I accept this award, and I thank the History Center for allowing me to bring light to this story. And as Eleanor Roosevelt once said, well-behaved women rarely make history, but obviously beer-drinking dogs do. So may all of you have a little Pee-wee in your life. Thank you.
History Center. Dr. Brandon was my first dentist, and I never actually had a cavity until about 3 years ago. I'd like to, Karen, I think you're going to come and you're going to accept the award, so you can kind of make yourself up. Dr. Ralph Brandon, better known as Buck, came to Punta Gorda in 1954 to take over the dental practice of Dr. Vernon Jordan. For many years, he was the only dentist in Charlotte County. Brandon Buck served on the City Council and the Housing Authority Board. For many years, he was on the staff as an oral surgeon at Punta Gorda Community Hospital and was a charter staff member of St. Joseph's Hospital in Punta Gorda. It's an honor for me to present this award and present this honor on behalf of Dr. Brandon, and accepting for him is his daughter, Karen Allison Droney, and granddaughter Leah.
Our family had the incredible honor of being front row seats to my grandfather's incredible life. And some of my favorite highlights personally are smoked mullet nights on his patio, and hearing old Punta Gorda stories, and of course attending every single Charlotte High football game, both home and away. I'm incredibly honored to be his granddaughter, and on behalf of our family, we're so honored to accept this wonderful recognition from the community of people he loved so much, and I know my papa would be as well. Thank you.
Is Earl Farr Sr. It's probably a little bit overdue for honoring Mr. Farr. In 1924, Earl D. Farr ventured out of his hometown of Wauchula, Florida, with only $500 and a typewriter, as David said, to open a law office in Punta Gorda. A 1923 graduate of the University of Florida Law School, he came to Punta Gorda with his new bride, Emily Sue. Initially, he hung a shingle in the Johnson building, then moved to an office in the Chadwick building, now the Celtic Ray. Later, he built the firm's own structure across the street. Over time, the one-man law firm grew to become the largest law firm in Charlotte County. While county attorney for over 30 years, Mr. Farr acted as prosecuting attorney and school board attorney. He negotiated with the Mackle brothers for the land to build the first school in Port Charlotte. Mr. Farr also helped incorporate and represented First Federal Savings and Loan Association of Charlotte County. He was also Punta Gorda's city attorney for 2 terms and served once as chairman of the 20th Judicial Circuit Bar Association. It's accepting for on behalf of the Farr family. Actually, we have 2 people who are going to be accepting. Scott Farr and Mr. Guy Emmerich, the senior partner of the Farr Law.
Hello, my name is Scott Farr, and Earl was my grandfather. He was a businessman, a lawyer, and a county commissioner. I remember going to their house every Sunday after church and having lunch. He was a loving family man. Earl loved hunting and fishing, and his greatest pastime was his garden. He always had the biggest garden, and when anybody came through the house, they would always leave with a big brown paper bag full of vegetables. Earl was always very generous and caring, and he never turned away anybody if they were in need or in trouble. I remember every weekend we would either go to Nocatee for smoked bacon, the B&B grocery store to get the green stamps, or he would take us Babcock ranch fishing, which I had the pleasure of working for 10 years there also. Earl loved the farm, Charlotte County, and most of all his family. Earl was one of the great men and families that was and still is in Punta Gorda. And remember, we have no future without the past. And thank you.
I joined the firm in 1971, and Mr. Farr was just stepping aside at that time and slowing down a little bit. But we learned a lot from him in the very beginning, and until he passed when he was 88 years old. Jack Hackett wrote the last paragraph in this brochure about Mr. Farr, and it hits the nail on the head. I was talking to Jack and David. One of the quotes of Mother Teresa that means something to me is when she said, "You can tell a man's character by how he treats someone who can do nothing for you." Earl Farr understood that. And so it's been an honor and a privilege to be there, and he's been our guiding light for a long time. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Scott. Our next honoree tonight is William L. Huckeby. William L. Huckeby was one of the earliest pioneers of the land known as Punta Gorda. first arriving in the Charlotte Harbor area around 1879. A few years later, in 1882, he moved, this is a great story, he moved his sawmill from Kentucky down the Mississippi to New Orleans, by rail to Cedar Key, then aboard a schooner to the mouth of the Caloosahatchee River. Then later, he brought the mill by flatboat from Punta Gorda to the Sans Souci area of Cleveland on Shell Creek. He purchased land along the Peace River in the Cleveland area where he built his family home. Much of the lumber used to build the town of Treview, which became Punta Gorda, came from Huckaby's sawmill. Lumber for the original Episcopal Church in Punta Gorda was also donated by Mr. Huckeby. And again, that's a brief summary, but I implore you to look further in our program. And accepting this honor for the Huckeby family is Mr. Huckaby's granddaughter, Brenda Persons.
I guess I'm anointed here. Okay. On behalf of Brenda Huckeby Persons, excuse me, and her brother Russ Huckeby, who could not be here tonight, we would like to accept this honor on behalf of the extended Huckeby family, some of which are here tonight. And I might add on the side, this is in this pamphlet, that Mr. Huckeby, William Huckeby, this church that is here, he served on the first committee who wrote a letter to the bishop, the Episcopal bishop in Orlando, to come here and help establish a missionary Episcopal church. And that led to this fine church. Thank you.
I think I might be getting a little older than I realized, because I remember that Mr. Huckeby, but I do remember the Huckabys, and I also remember a number of the honorees and inductees, including our next inductee, Mr. James Lawless. I'd like to read the plaque. James Lawless came to Punta Gorda in 1954 to teach English and coach football at Charlotte High School. His 27-year career with the Charlotte County school system started as assistant coach, advanced over the years to head coach, athletic director, then on to assistant principal and principal, director of instruction, finally culminating as superintendent of schools for many years. Before his retirement in 1982, he was involved in the beginnings of Lemon Bay High School and was instrumental in the development of the Charlotte Vocational Technical School. During his life in Punta Gorda, he acted for many years as deacon for the First Baptist Church in Punta Gorda. He has been remembered by colleagues and others as a straight arrow and someone you can always depend upon. It was also said that while he believed you needed to be flexible, he knew when not to bend. It was said that he would cancel football games if other teams refused to play with black players at that time. So, accepting this honor on behalf of the Lawless family is Mr. Burton Lawless, and I'm going to go back and get this plaque to, he's not quite as mobile as he was when he was playing football for the Dallas Cowboys.
don't think about J.J. Lawless. He and my mother didn't have better friends. If I hadn't had them, I would have never gone anywhere. We got to pilots, and they're pushing, and he told us JBL, he was straight, and he was very straight. He could flood up there, I'll be straight with the heart. But he was a great dad. I want to say something quick. I want to introduce my wife, 35 years. She's taking care of me. It's really the greatest thing I ever had. And my son, and his wife. Thank you so much for the great pause and just, I mean, it feels good for people standing here. I was blessed, so great to have a chance in a small town, people in Punta Gorda. It just shows you that you have the ability and have people to push you, you can do it. So I tell these kids, don't set goals for yourself, but when you get knocked down, you got to do what you can. One of the great stories I'm going to tell on there, 1970, some of you all were around, we got to the semifinals state one season, and they beat us 18-14. What a hard work it was. I was walking back to the bus, I was crying my eyes out. Next thing I knew, I felt a big arm around my neck. It was Dad. That's the kind of love that he gave me my whole life. When I was in the rehab center, I was in the hospital in Waco, Texas for 2 months with broken neck, Tuesday every night, next day. So I was so blessed. I'm so proud of Dad. Thank you so much for putting me. This is a great honor for me. It really is. And thank you. That's all I can say about it.
J. McCann. I'm going to read the inscription on the plaque. Edwin J. McCann served on Punta Gorda City Council for many years and was elected to 2 terms as mayor at a time when city citizens still elected the mayor. As such, he initiated the construction of the playground in the Bayfront Park, now known as Gilchrist Park. Also, he was instrumental in starting many new infrastructure projects. He also served a period as city manager. McCann was a nurseryman for 30 years, receiving international recognition for flowers uniquely produced by him in Punta Gorda from plants originally created by his father, Captain J. McCann. And for those of you who might have been here last year, will remember that J. McCann was honored last year and inducted into the Hall of Honor. He, among other things, was a guide for Teddy Roosevelt, a fishing guide for Teddy Roosevelt when he came down here. Edward McCann served as Punta Gorda's weatherman for 40 years, officially raising the warning flag for coming storms and reporting to the National Weather Bureau. McCann also served on the State Welfare Board, was an active Rotarian, and served as worshipful master of the Masonic Lodge in Punta Gorda. Accepting for Edward J. McCann is his niece, I believe his niece or great niece, Joy McCann House.
I'm grateful to have known so many of the men that are being honored here tonight. First of all, Dr. Brandon was my dentist all through the years, and our family dentist, until he retired. Probably like most people. After I graduated from business college in 1962, Mr. Earl Farr hired me as a secretary at the Farr Law Firm. At that time, it was just Farr and Farr, and they were on Olympia Avenue across from the courthouse. Then Mr. Lawless recruited me to come to work at the school superintendent's office as his secretary and the superintendent's secretary. But I had known Mr. Lawless for a long time. He was my 8th grade English teacher, and he was my high school principal. We worked together for many years until he retired, and he and his family have always been our good friends. I also knew Mr. and Mrs. Smoak. Through the years, I went to school with their son, Danny. I remember going to a birthday party at their house when they lived on Red Esplanade in the Sandlin House. On the next block on Red Esplanade is where my Uncle Edward lived with his wife Lena, and that is now Carmela's Restaurant. My uncle grew up on the other end of Red Esplanade. That's where my grandfather was hybridizing double amaryllis and hibiscus. And my uncle followed in his footsteps in the love of plants. He said that his dad never gave a hoot about the commercial possibilities of his discovery, but gave away most of the bulbs. So when an especially nice flowering one appeared, he occasionally slipped it away and used it for propagation. At one time, he had more than 100,000 bulbs and was internationally known for his work. My Aunt Lena said when she first met my uncle, he was growing 5 acres of roses. But she said almost as soon as she became Mrs. McCann, he gave up the roses and started growing sweet potatoes. He explained that's what a young man has to do with a new wife to be able to feed her. My uncle liked to play golf, won many trophies over the years. I want to thank the Punta Gorda History Center for honoring my Uncle Edward, and know he would be very proud of his honor. Thank you.
Next honoree is Edwin M. Parker. Edwin M. Parker served in the U.S. Army during World War I. Parker was in his early 30s when he and his wife, Jenny, came to the city in 1925. Edwin operated Parker's Drug Store on Marion Avenue for 25 years. Parker was also a realtor and owned ranch land off Shell Creek. He was mayor from 1940 to 1942. He was also the last surviving charter member of the Punta Gorda Kiwanis and served as its president in the 1930s. He even served as lieutenant governor of the Kiwanis. He was also a charter member of the Charlotte County Chamber of Commerce. So, a very accomplished person. Accepted for the family of Edwin Parker is Lethea Majori and Dr. Joe Majori also.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here to accept this honor for Edwin Parker and the Parker family. The Parker family was not able to be here tonight. Uncle Edwin was a driving force in Punta Gorda, and we all loved him dearly. Thank you.
And I also had the honor of knowing Frank Smoak. He and my uncle Frank grew up here together in the late 19-teens, early 1920s. And they were close friends, not only when they were going to school at the University of Florida, but I always thought this was kind of an amazing coincidence. My uncle served in the Navy in World War II. Frank Smoak, as you'll hear, served in the Army, and they met. It was just an amazing coincidence. They met in North Africa right before the invasion of Sicily, just at a chance meeting with just tens of thousands of troops that were getting ready for battle in that area. Reading from the plaque, D. Frank Smoak Jr. came to Punta Gorda as a young child with his family in 1924. He played and fished on the bayfront, was a member of the 1935-1936 Charlotte High School football team, and graduated from Charlotte High in 1936. After receiving a scholarship, he attended the University of Florida, where he played football for the Gators and was a letterman in 1938 and 1939. In 1942, he married, and a son was born while he was deployed. Frank was a captain in the Army during World War II in North Africa, Italy, and Germany. After the war, he returned to the University of Florida to attain his law degree in 1948. Then he rejoined the Army to serve in the Judge Advocate General Corps. And he left there to become an agent for the FBI. Well, eventually, in the 1950s, Frank returned to his hometown here in Punta Gorda to a house on the bayfront, and soon was elected mayor in 1954. During his term, the city began expansion of the water and sewer system in anticipation of expected growth west of town. After his time on the city council, he served as a state legislator and as the county prosecuting attorney. And he maintained his law practice in Punta Gorda until 1991. Accepting for the family of Frank Smoak Jr. is his grandson, Justin Smoak.
My grandpa knew he was a pretty big character. He was about 10 when I passed away, but I remember him being a mountain of a man. And I had the honor of running into the Huckeby family not long ago, and they reminded me of one of his famous quotes. He moved here from Savannah. He was probably 4 or 5 when he moved here, but he loved Florida, and he was a Florida cracker, born and bred. One of the things that he used to say was, you can't be called a cracker until you've been a crone for at least 20 years. He was a mountain of a man. Anybody that knew him knows he was stubborn as an old mule, but he bled orange and blue. He loved the Florida Gators. One of the funniest things about our household is my dad. Anybody that knows Dan, my dad, he graduated at FSU. So it created quite the house divided through the 90s when we had good teams. So we, on behalf of my grandpa, I'm going to lead the family in the right direction. And on behalf of my grandpa, God bless Punta Gorda, and go Gators.
Go Gators! Our next honoree, this is a little bit serious. Our next honoree is our veteran who we're honoring tonight. And that is Robert Lee Cochran. Robert Lee Cochran was serving as a Marine when he was killed in World War II during the invasion of Saipan Island in the Pacific in July of 1944. Cochran, the son of Mr. and Mrs. R.L. Cochran, was 23 years old when he lost his life. Cochran, born in Georgia, spent most of his life in Punta Gorda, where he had many friends. He was a graduate of Charlotte High School, class of 1938, and was on the football team for several years. An organ was dedicated to his memory to the First Baptist Church in Punta Gorda as the only member of the congregation to be killed during World War II. Robert Cochran was posthumously honored or awarded the Bronze Star by the President of the United States for showing extraordinary heroism during a heavy night of counterattack by the enemy. Daringly helped break up an attempted infiltration of hostile forces until he was fatally wounded. I don't think we could have picked really probably a better person, better veteran this year to honor and to induct into the Punta Gorda History Center Hall of Fame or Hall of Honor. Accepting this honor on behalf of Robert Lee Cochran is Michael Gall, I believe. Michael Gall.
It's an honor to accept this on behalf of the family.